Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Kingdom of Dreams podcast. Today, my guest is someone I've already had on the podcast a few times, John Rosengrant. He's a VFX puppeteer who has worked on films like Terminator, Aliens, Jurassic Park. Today, he's here to talk about Small Soldiers, Joe Dante's directed film. Came out in July 10th, 1998. I had a great time chatting with him about the film. I also spoke to Marshall Harvey about 4 or 5 months ago about Small Soldiers, who was the editor. You can check out that conversation too. Do subscribe, comment, and like. And if there's a guest that you want to see or a film that you want to have covered, please leave it in the comment. For now, enjoy my conversation with John Rosengrant for Small Soldiers.
Hey man, how are you?
I'm good, John. How are you?
Let's see if you can see me. Can you see me now? Yeah.
I can always see you. How have
Uh,
you been? How was your Thanksgiving?
Good. Yeah, it was great.
Good, good. Did you visit family or family visited you or?
Local family, and it was the
Mhm.
first year that I didn't have to cook, so it was great.
Super. That's awesome. Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much, man, again for joining
Oh, sure, sure.
to talk about Small Soldiers.
Yeah,
Um, I don't know if I told you this, but I spoke to the editor, Marshall Harvey, um, 4 or 5 months ago about Small Soldiers. He edited the
really.
film. Yeah. It was a great conversation, and obviously your work in the film and your team's work in the film was integral to the film with that, because without it, it wouldn't be what it is today. So really happy to chat about that.
Okay. Well, I'm I have fond memories of that movie. I liked it. It was good fun, and I have a hobby where I do military miniatures, so it was kind of fun to be able to create something like this.
That's awesome. Did you have that hobby back then when you were doing Small Soldiers?
I did, yeah, yeah,
Interesting. Tell me
yeah.
about that a little bit, the hobby. That would be really cool to know.
So it's just fun. I mean, ever since I was a teenager, I started sculpting and painting and creating my own miniatures, and I don't know, I like the military history, so I tie into that. And so when this movie came along, felt like a real natural fit. And so from what I remember, there were some designs from Hasbro, plus we started doing some designs, and we meaning the team at Stan Winston's studio, and it was basically Crash, Mark McCreary, and myself, and I don't know, there's a few others that were designing, but we ended up coming up with some characters that ended up in the movie. So it was fun.
That's really cool. I still remember when the first time ever, like the teaser was revealed, or you see the visuals. It was kind of like, Toy Story meets Gremlins almost. Uh,
Yeah,
you know, Obviously Joe Dante directed Gremlins and Small
right,
Soldiers,
right.
and it's such it's one of those films. We talked about Jurassic Park last time, where I discovered this after I spoke to Marshall Harvey, that there is a big community of Small Soldier fans. And
Is there?
there's actually people who make those miniatures like the way you would do. And I don't know if in
Wow.
Europe or somewhere, and it's a big fan base. And it was just such a good cast movie, especially Tommy Lee Jones,
Yeah,
being
yeah.
Captain Chip. You talked about fond memories. When I talk about Small Soldiers, what is the first thing that comes to mind in terms of your work on it and the process that you guys went through? And
Well, we had the Gorgonites, which were the good guys, but those
yeah,
were the monsters. And so those were a lot of fun. And each artist sort of took one and made it his own thing. And then the villains in the movie were the soldiers, but I ended up doing a lot of the soldiers, sculpting and creating those, and then a lot of other artists, Joey Orozco, he did Archer, Bill Basso, he did Freakenstein, Jim Sharmatz, he did Slam Fist, Ian Stevenson. I can't quite remember everybody
Yeah, yeah, that's
did
fine.
it
That's
all,
fine.
but it was fun. We each kind of dove in, and it was also trying to come up with different types of puppets that were rod puppeted, puppets that were self-contained that you could kind of set down and turn on, and it had some functions. And so we had a whole bevy of different types of puppets to use in each scene, and there were times when we could get in there with a full rod cable puppet, and then there's other times when it was more of the self-contained, which was had like an RC head on it, and had, I think maybe the body swiveled, but it had enough to where in a wide shot it looked like it was moving and doing something. So that was fun, and we had to, because at the time they didn't have a scratch track or anything, so we, the puppeteers, had to do the voices of the
Mm,
characters, and so we had to learn the dialogue and do all that, which makes sense because if they're speaking, uh, you just as an actor you need to hear the lines, and that, we did a lot with that young boy, and I'm sure he's a grown man by now, but back then he was a young boy. And Kirsten Dunst, I think, was in this movie too.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I had worked with her on Interview with a Vampire a few years earlier. So I don't know. It was just a fun movie. It was a challenging film. And I remember Steven Spielberg coming by a few times. He was interested in it, and I was talking to him. And that one time, uh, I think he was doing Band of Brothers pickup shots over at
Mm,
Universal at the same
mm.
time. So he brought the team from Band of Brothers over to check out the small soldiers, the big soldiers looking at the small
Oh,
soldiers.
that's so cool.
That was a fun moment. And at the time, nobody had seen Private Ryan, so I didn't know what was coming on, and I was talking to Matt Damon and the whole cast of Private Ryan. So it's fun
Yeah, because
stuff.
because this came out literally, I think 18 days before Private Ryan came out.
Mm,
Because I think Private Ryan was July 23rd and this was July 4th or 5th, something like that.
yeah.
Um, being involved in the puppeteer work and the animatronics, and it's one of those films. When I was talking to Marshall Harvey, it's a very rarity where you have combination of puppet work with CGI blend in perfectly. Like very few
Mhm.
films have done that. Like maybe James Cameron has done that with Terminator. Spielberg has done with Jurassic Park. How involved were you with the VFX teams at the time of production in terms of, obviously I'm assuming there would be storyboards at the time of production. This is we're gonna get like a full body shot
There
that will
there
be,
was storyboards, so we sort of it being an Amblin production, there was a lot of the same team that was involved with the Jurassic Park. So we sort of went through it and did the same treatment as we had with the Jurassic Parks. We went through, figured out what we could do, what sorry,
that's
what
okay.
definitely had to be CGI. And I remember meeting with all of the ILM team on that movie at the same time. And I think because they weren't real characters, it made it more seamless for them to match what we had done, and making a toy come to life. Um, it was good for both of us. It was good for the CG. It was good for us because you needed it to make it cool, but it didn't have to be completely real, because it's a toy.
Yeah.
So that was helpful. There was a lot to do on that movie. There was a lot of shots. It was, and we were involved with a whole boatload of them. I remember working pretty hard on that movie. It went on for a while, but it was a fun. Joe Dante was great. Uh, he understood this type of work coming
Yeah.
from, The Howling and Gremlins.
Gremlins. Yeah.
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 So he was well versed in the once I showed him what the bag of tricks was, they were, you know, we need the self-contained for this. We need the blah 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 for that. So it was good. It was a fun
Was
experience.
Yeah. No, it was a fun experience watching it. Even now, again, I watched it recently, um, before I spoke to Marshall, and it still lives up. It still lives up. It may not have done box office wise that well, but it's still a great film. And you mentioned that how there was a lot of work that you had to do. If there was one thing that you can remember that stands out about working on a certain character or just in a scene in particular, were any kind of technical challenges that you guys may have come
I
across and
think
how?
the Gwendy character, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have that much I had so much to do with the Gorgonites and the soldiers themselves that those Gwendys were being handled a bit afar, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have my hands directly on them in the same way. But those they had to do a lot, and I remember that being challenging. I don't remember the exact challenges now, but at the time I remember this being like, oof, there's a lot to do here.
Yeah. Did you know that there was the marketing campaign behind Small Soldiers was very similar to the marketing campaign of Godzilla at the time that was coming out 2 months before? Did you know
No,
that?
I did not know that. No.
Okay. So uh the way the Godzilla movie was promoted from the director of Independence Day, Ronald, I still never know how to pronounce his last name. Is it Emmerich or Emmerich, one or the other? They were all about size does matter, and then DreamWorks promoted it size doesn't matter. And then one of the cool, and Marshall told me about this, and it is on YouTube. So the very first Godzilla teaser that came out, it was shot in a museum where kids are looking at dinosaur skeletons, and all of a sudden there's this big paw that comes in, and the Godzilla comes out.
Yeah, I
So
remember that.
according to Marshall Harvey, and this is again on YouTube, DreamWorks hired the same agency, same actors, recreated shot by shot trailer, and instead of the Godzilla foot, it was I think Chip Hazard's foot that comes in. But when they showed it to Spielberg, I think he said it's not a good idea. We're gonna get sued. So they never released it because Sony was gonna end up suing them. But I think that was pretty brilliant for them to do that.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Yeah, I mean, I kind of remember this now that you mention it, the the ad campaign, but I sort of forget about that sort of a thing
Yeah, yeah, it's not your job. Once the
yeah,
movie's done, you're out. That's it.
yeah, once the movie's
You're
done, the promotional campaigns or what they are. I remember, we designed the boxes and the toy boxes that they came in, and we had a lot to do on that movie, and we manufactured some of the toy boxes, and then I think we turned over the artwork to the art department, and they made a boatload of them to put in the shelves in the store, and it was fun. We had to. We did a few things like on the soldiers. I had these custom made big giant dog tags made with the small
mm,
soldier symbol on them, the same one that was on their belt buckle. But I went and had those made in homage to the old G.I. Joe dog tags that were oversized. I don't know if
nice.
anybody notices that kind of thing in the movie, but yeah, anyway, it's
I'm
there.
sh I'm sure people did. I didn't grow up with G.I. Joe, so I probably didn't see that, but I'm sure people did, and I think that's what they talked about when the movie came out. Like it was like sort of like a, the GI Joe action figures. Obviously, you would see them on TV at the time, the ads that would come in because it was a big deal in the '90s, early to mid '90s, GI Joes.
Yeah.
And you talked about you were doing all this miniature work anyways, and any of that sort of miniature or miniatures that transformed over closest to any of the small soldier figures that you see
Well,
Chip
it,
had?
it was a lot of the techniques that I had used, we did to build and mold the weapons and the equipment and things like that. So there were similarities, and the whole time I was trying to pay homage to, like you said, the GI Joe, but not make it look, they didn't look anything like the GI Joes. So we weren't worried about that, but I don't know, I thought it was fun to put some of that into them. So if people, the way the weapons were put in the box with them and different things like that. Uh, it was fun stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I always wonder, and I'm sure people do too, like obviously for studios to make a sequel that has to be a financially viable product or a film, right? That's just the way the system works. I was just looking it up right now. Like I think it was made for like 40 million budget in US and Canada. It only made 54 million. Was there ever a conversation when you guys were making it by Joe or after that there could be a potential sequel, or was this never on the cards that you're not aware
I
of?
think there was some talk of that at one point in time. There was some talk of a sequel. I don't know what ever happened to that though. I think it was mentioned, but I don't know. There's a lot of movies that I've done that they've talked about sequels
Of
happening, and they
course. Yeah.
they just they just never do. I don't. One that I thought for sure they were going to make a sequel to was Real Steel.
Oh, the
Never.
Ben Stiller movie, right?
Uh, it's actually
Is it Ben
no,
Stiller?
Real Steel is Hugh Jackman is in that one.
Oh, right. Yes. Yes, you're right. You're right.
The Ben Stiller one was Neighborhood Watch, uh,
Okay.
or The Watch, as it got retitled because political correctness.
Of
I
course.
got to
Of
them,
course.
and
Yeah, Real Steel was directed by Sean Levy.
yes, which has a connection there because I think Sean Levy was the producer of The Watch, which Ben Stiller was in, and I think they know each other. Might have been a night at the museum too. I think Sean might have done one of those.
Hmm.
So I don't think your connection is that far off.
Real Steel, that was more recent, right? 11, 12 years ago.
2010, I think that was. Yeah.
How was that compared to Small Soldiers, if there is any comparison whatsoever?
No comparison, really. I mean, completely different uh, ideas. Big giant robots versus little, 12-inch tall toys. Uh, yeah, totally different. I don't,
You can talk about that a little bit if you like. I'd be more
what,
than
Real
happy to.
Steel?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I thought Real Steel was one of the greatest movies that no one saw, and I think they really screwed up the publicity on that. I think it's a sweet movie, it's a good movie, it's an interesting film, and that's why I kind of thought there would be a sequel to it, and there was talk of it. But Real Steel got nominated for an Oscar for visual effects, and we all we worked real hard on that. It was very well organized. Ron Ames was the effects producer on it, and
Hmm.
Josh McLagan, who was the first AD and a producer on it. And I know Josh, I go back to Predator 2 with Josh, but I did Avatar with him. So we were coming right off of Avatar, and it was one of the most well organized movies that I'd ever worked on. and is talking about visual effects dovetailing in perfectly with what we were doing. Everyone knew exactly what was happening on that movie. And I would say on Small Soldiers we did too. I never for once felt like I don't know how we're going to do this. There was a few gray areas of what should be CG, and we probably tried to do a little too much on that movie. But and I Small Soldiers was well organized. I felt like I never felt like I don't know what I'm doing here or what's going on. And I never felt that way on Real Steel. Everything had a plan. And I think that those days, I sort of miss those days, of the Jurassic Parks. And, you went through everything shot by shot. So once you got to the set, you knew this is going to
What
be
to do.
CG, or
Yeah.
this is us, and this is how it's going to be done. And we did that on T2 as well. There was a big giant book of storyboards filled with all of that. But I think it's a smart way to go because you actually plan out what the shot is going to be and how it's going to be done. There's some movies that are going, you just show up and director has not a clue as to how he's going to shoot this, and he thinks he's just going to shoot a plate. And it's like, well, you got to know what's going in that plate. It's not just a green screen you're going to film. You got to have something in there. We have to have some screen direction or camera movement as to
Yeah.
what it's going to be. It's just not going to magically appear. But in fairness, they probably that's putting somebody at the helm of a movie that was beyond their scope or not their wheelhouse. A lot of effects things going
Yeah.
on.
I genuinely believe, and I mean, I'm not trying to belittle anyone. I genuinely believe as a director, this idea of that you should just know directing, maybe it works for some people, and that's fine. I feel that you need to know every aspect of production, at least a little bit, so you are able to articulate that to whoever you're working with in a proper way, as
Well,
opposed to, well, I don't
that's
know
how
how.
I was brought up. I mean, I went to the film school of James Cameron, and
Yeah,
starting on Terminator 1, Aliens, T2, Avatar, I don't know. He does know everybody's position, and he does know what he wants from every department. And that's just sort of how Steven Spielberg is like that. Or he'll acquiesce to the production designer, but he's been fully involved as to what the outcome or the way it should be done. And anyway, those are the people that I cut my teeth, on movies doing this stuff. And I just thought that's how it was supposed to be. So later on, when you run into a guy that has not a clue as to what's going on and doesn't seem to care, it just feels like, well, why am I here? What am I
yeah,
what am I
yeah.
doing? Yeah.
Well,
If
it's
you
like running. Yeah,
if you don't care, I was told I'm supposed to be working for you. And
yeah.
anyway, that's how I always
Well,
envisioned.
Jeffrey Katzenberg said, um, I was putting together a sizzle for one of the projects that I'm developing, and there's a quote that I found in Jeffrey Katzenberg's quote in there. He said, "If you don't believe what it is that you're working on is going to work, why do you think anybody else will?" Right? And that's pretty much a testament to what you're saying. It's just so
Yeah,
important. Even if you don't have a clue what the hell you're doing, you have to make it look like that you
yeah,
believe in this, right? Because otherwise they're following your lead.
yeah. Well, there's famous things that I've worked on that was highly successful the first season, and then they want to cut the budget every year afterwards with the caveat, well, we don't know how it's going to do. Well, if you keep cutting the budget by 10% every season, you it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, in my opinion. Eventually, it will suck because no one will have enough money to do it the right way.
Yeah.
And so it will
Yeah.
fail, and no one will
100%.
care. And then you can say, "See, I told you." And I can say back to you, "See, I told you."
Yeah, that's true.
But
Y- John, you mentioned most of the you mentioned Small Soldiers and Real Steel were the projects where you know, it was something that was not necessarily easy, but you knew going in what it was, and there was a lot of preparation. There was a lot of organization. I don't want you to name any names, or if you don't want to name any film, that's fine. But was there a particular project where things weren't as you expected, or you didn't know what was going to happen, whether it was in the later part of your career or earlier part of the year?
yeah, no, there's also always those kind of movies where you show up and you don't. Yeah, I don't want to get into naming specifics because, to be honest, I didn't walk in their shoes and I don't know what
Fair enough.
circumstances they had to deal with or. Uh, but for me, I would just even say that to the crew. It's like, hey, I just got thrown into this and I I, I want your help here, or I don't know what to do here, or I don't know. There's just different ways people handle things. And like I said, I don't exactly know what their real story is because
Yeah, of course,
not
there's
them.
yeah, yeah,
So give them the benefit of the doubt. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You're being paid to do a job, do your job the best you can, and with the information you're given, and go from there. And the
yeah,
ones that go super smooth, well, those are count yourself lucky, you know. And for the ones that are a little harder to birth, well, it's a growing and learning experience. So
yeah.
look at it in a positive way there.
What's your take on immersive VFX? Like, for example, I was talking to David Smith. He owns this company called Plate Pros, so where they would actually, go out in the city and, for example, the movie like Joker 2, or I don't know if you've heard of a movie called Daddy-O, which is with Dakota Johnson and Sean Penn, which takes place in a cab. So it's not like
Mm.
LED screens, but it's basically they would shoot around the city, all the footage, and it would put on a screen, and it feels like they're actually in the environment when they're actually on a sound stage, but they're still interacting with the visuals around them. What's your take on that technology? Just personally, I mean, it's not about
I
right or
have
wrong.
never worked with it, so I
Mm,
don't know, to be honest. On The Mandalorian, it was a big deal to do the screens
yeah,
and to have all that, and I thought it was really useful, and I could think of a million ways it could help, productions, if you're shooting something on a snowy mountaintop and instead of really going on a snowy mountaintop, if you could have those screens and you could have enough of the set recreated, but not have to spend the night out in the woods somewhere up on a mountaintop, it would be great. Send a crew up there and shoot it so it's believable. No, I thought, you know, I don't shy away from technology. I think if it can help you,
yeah.
embrace it and use it. So if this technique of what you're talking about with the Sean Penn movie, what would you say? Dakota Johnson?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
called the Daddy-O. It's just literally majority of the film takes place in a cab where she's the passenger, he's the cab driver, and it's just talking about life, relationships, problems. It's actually a really, really good film. I highly recommend it. It's rare they make these kind of movies anymore, but
Yeah. Two people
Uh,
talking in a room. Yeah.
well, no, just meaningful, stories, right? It's just
Yeah.
I miss that stuff. Like I just saw last night. I don't even know about this movie. We just found it on Amazon Prime, my wife and I, called Holdover. What's his name? The actor who was in Lady in the Water. He's a very Paul. God, what's his name?
Giamatti.
Yeah, he plays a teacher, and it's his 4 or 5 students and him that get stuck at a school or Christmas holidays because
Yeah.
the parents were busy. What a great freaking movie! I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I
Well, it was
like to see.
Oscar nominated, that one
Yeah,
was,
I didn't even know about it. Like I just totally. Have you seen it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing
I
movie.
liked it too. It's a
Yeah,
quiet sort of movie like you're
yeah,
talking about. It's not a big
yeah,
bombastic special effects laden movie. It's just a story
yeah.
about these people that are all stuck together and really don't want to be together. Yeah.
And they all have a broken story, right? They all have problems in
They
their
all have
lives,
a
and
broken story.
and
Yeah.
that's what brings them together. Um, kind of wrapping up with Small Soldiers, John, one last question. Again, when you finish production on a film, you move on to the next one, right? Whatever that may be. But I'm sure, when the film comes out, you take a look at the final or somewhat of a close to a final version. W- Do you remember how satisfied you were with everything that sort of
I
went?
liked it. I thought it was a fun movie. I liked it a lot. And I was disappointed it didn't find a bigger audience. But Galaxy Quest didn't either, and I thought that was a an amazing movie. I think Small Soldiers, Galaxy Quest, those weren't stupid projects. Those were great projects and well written and put together. And I don't know what happens. Is it marketing or it just somehow just doesn't find its audience?
Yeah, I think it's marketing. I don't know about Small Soldiers, but I know Galaxy Quest was really, really badly marketed because I figured that movie out because I was a Star Trek fan. Like I
Hmm.
could,
Yeah,
you pick it up right away. But people who don't know Star Trek, they
yeah,
probably couldn't figure it out, right? And did you work on Galaxy Quest with Dean Parisot?
yeah. Well, I did a very little, to be honest.
Okay, okay.
I don't know what I was doing at the same time, but Shane Mahan, one of business partners, he was the main guy on that. But I did do some work on
Yeah,
Galaxy Quest, yeah. And I remember
yeah,
reading that script, going, "This is fantastic," because yes, I did grow up with Star Trek, and
yeah.
it was spoofed it in a great way, in a
In a
loving way.
great way, yeah. It
Yeah.
wasn't like, dumb comedy or anything. It was just,
Oh,
for me, the biggest thing in that movie, I spoke to Dean Parisot very like about a year and a half ago. One of my favorite things in that movie was, which I never thought about when I was watching Star Trek, specifically Next Generation. Sam, is it Sam Rockwell who
yeah,
plays the guy, right?
yeah,
When they show his character the way I'm gonna be the one who's gonna die. I recall like in every Star Trek episode, there would be this one person who would get, shot by a phaser because they
yeah.
couldn't kill off the main characters.
No, exactly. No, it was true, and I mean, you had great villains, and I think the Spock character was fun, and the yeah, it's just it paid great homage to it, and
Yeah, it
well
certainly
done.
did. It came around the same time as the Trekkies documentary did. I don't know if you
No, I
have
didn't
seen
know
that.
that.
Yeah,
No.
so I was talking to the director of Trekkies, and the fan character in Galaxy Quest was inspired by the Trekkies movies. Fan, like
Oh,
that's how they kind of got the idea from the fans' point of view and how he saves the day. But yeah, another great. If you're into Star Trek, watch Trekkies documentary. It's
okay.
really fun.
I'll have to see that.
It's really fun.
Uh, Speaking of movies that I think had missed marketing, I think Real Steel also, because the numbers on Saturdays and Sundays would go through the roof. So it was young kids going to see it, but I think it got marketed as a date night movie. And
Really?
yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I'm 10 guys removed from what happens, but I remember that the numbers would go through the roof on Saturdays and Sundays. So
Yeah.
obviously the people going to see it were going at matinees and it was kids. And when you watch that movie, it's a kids. It should have been marketed to kids, not teenagers or 20-year-olds, you know. Anyway, what do I know? I'm just the effects guy.
But being the effects guy, is that movie more fresh in your mind in terms of the work that you did?
It's fresh in my mind because we were so immersed in that movie and just coming off of Avatar, you know, utilized a lot of the same technology and I don't know, it's just really a well-oiled machine, that one. It was put together really well. I had a lot of fun working on that. And sometimes having a lot of fun on a movie doesn't equate to a good movie,
Yes, yes.
but sometimes the ones that I wouldn't say came easy. I mean, it was hard work. There was a lot of hard work involved, but it was uh, it was just well done. It came off really well. It was a pleasure to work on, and it was no surprises. But when I think back on Small Soldiers, I don't remember anything about that one that wasn't well put together, and it was fun to
Yeah.
do at the time. We had a
Yeah. Well,
lot to
yes.
do on that movie, but
Yeah, it's evident. I mean, the whole movie is without you guys, it won't even work, right?
yeah.
Like it's like it just won't work. I mean, I think a lot of that movie, which uh, maybe moviegoers don't probably notice that much, but the fans certainly do, or people in the industry. You know, the CGI was great, but the animatronics is what made it work, right? Like the
Oh,
actual,
well,
it
thank
just
you. Yeah.
it gave it so much life, and it people don't see that, but you feel it for sure.
Well, I mean, we had a presence in every shot, and I think I don't know, I still am a believer, even if it's something's going to get replaced. And I'm a believer in CGI. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah,
but I also feel like I believe in having something there tangible because the
100%.
actors acting is reacting. So if you
Yep.
see something for real that's there, you have a reaction to it, whether it's very subtle or if it's big, depends on what's going on with it. But I think it's helpful. I really do.
Yeah. No, it is because I don't really watch superhero movies, but I've seen some of the behind the scenes stuff, and it would be like two people standing in a room surrounded by green screen, and you could tell that the interaction that they have with their, antagonists or enemies on the final is not there because in the production they were not there. It's
Mm-mm.
just a bunch of green screens. So but yeah, no, if you're really proud about real steel and if it's something that you're interested in talking about in detail, I would be more than happy to try to chat about. I haven't even seen the film. I have got to see it, of course, but if
Yeah.
that's something you're
Well,
ever up
you
for.
see it. Maybe in the future we can talk about it. Yeah, I think it was a fun it was a fun movie. It was a good one. But not to take away from Small Soldiers. That was a
Yes.
fun. It makes me want to go see it now. My son was the perfect age in my kids when that movie came out, so he really loved Small Soldiers a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually showed my kids Gremlins and I haven't showed them Small Soldiers, Joe Dante being the constant here. But
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna show it to them because I it's a really fun movie. Again, the point of view of an antagonist and protagonist, that's what like does. He does
Yeah.
really, really well. But yeah, it's you should watch it again. I'm gonna watch it with my kids again. It's a great film. It's a great little gem.
Well, my son is coming out to visit me at Christmas time. I think it'd be a fun one to put on and relive with him. What year did Small Soldiers come out?
I think it was in 1998. Let me just check.
98.
Yeah, 98.
So 98. So my son would have been 5 going on 6. So really magic age for him. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I don't
well,
think that movie was for 5 and 6 year olds at the time.
no, probably not. There's been a few movies like that that I sit down when my kids were small. I mean, now they're all grown up, but when they were small, I'd sit down. Yeah, let's watch this, and then be like, "Oh my God, I don't remember all this cursing. I don't remember." T2 was the one that it
Yeah,
comes to
yeah,
mind. It's like Linda Hamilton's character when she's locked up. It's like, oh God, what have I
yeah,
done? Yeah, let's fast forward through this part.
yeah. But I will say this: I will bet you if Small Soldiers came out today, 2, 3 year olds would be watching it because the standards of,
Yeah,
what's good for kids and not has completely changed in the last 25, 26 years.
it's true, and some things they just don't get, which is
Yeah,
okay too.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Awesome. Well,
yeah.
great, man. Thank you so
All
much
right.
again for the chat as usual. I appreciate it. A very good Merry Christmas to you and Happy New Year and to you and your family.
Yeah, same to you. Yeah.
Thank you,
All
sir.
right.
Take care.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.